In this course, the attitude that we're going to be looking at is the leadership mindset. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what the leadership mindset is. Mindset is a way that we perceive the world and its impact on us. Here's how we can tune into mindset. Stop. Close your eyes. Imagine you're standing by a river. That river is your own mind. It's moving swiftly by with ideas, reactions, thoughts. Observe it from the shore. Good. Now open your eyes. That swiftly moving river of thought is part of your mindset, and we will sojourn back here over the next hours together. There are many, many factors that go into mindset. Mindset is an essential thread throughout this course. We're going to be looking at what's called perception because that's something that we have direct influence over. That's something that we have the power to change. Mindset at work is shaped by where you've worked, who you've worked with, and who you were mentored and coached by. Mindset is flexible, and that's the important thing. You can cultivate a learning mindset, and that's one of the things that we're going to be exploring. How do you train yourself? How do you train yourself to be able to have this leadership mindset? The research on neuroplasticity, which means the brain is able to develop new neural grooves, gives us insight into how malleable, pliable, and trainable the mind really is. Evolving leaders know they can change their own minds and wire new neural connections for the good of themselves and/or the whole. This means the brain is able to learn new actions, skills, and attitudes, as well as stop or shift attitudes and actions that are not effective. So let's just go into a few characteristics of the leadership mindset. One thing is that the leadership mindset is adaptive. We're in situations where having a fixed point of view or having an opinion that is not useful in the present circumstance is really ineffective. We have to be adaptive. We have to be flexible. We have to be able to move with the situation. A term that you may be familiar with regarding the leadership mindset is mindful. What I mean by mindful is that there's a kind of awareness that a leader brings to a situation. I was talking to somebody yesterday who was describing leaders that they have really enjoyed working with. One of the characteristics that she said was common for all the leaders that she worked with, that she really admired, was that they seemed to have a kind of presence. It wasn't that their presence was charismatic. It wasn't necessarily that they had a personality that was winning and charming. It was that they were aware of situations and their place in them. They were focused. I'm sure that you've had the experience yourself of being in a situation where you lose focus. You can't remember why you're there, what you're doing, or what your desired outcome is. But the leadership mindset cultivates focus, because one of the things that we know is that a leader has to be the one who directs the attention of themselves and of others. Everybody is in the same boat, and your attention is being clamored for by so many forces.
Juliet Adams, director of Ahead for Work, a firm specializing in leadership and workplace productivity, discusses how mindfulness practice has transformed her mindset.
I used to be somebody, I was very driven, very, very outcome focused, and I still am outcome focused, but I put myself under immense pressure. So you could call it stress, I mean, but what is stress? Stress is just about your level of arousal, and it's all relative. But I immediately noticed that I was calmer, that my body was more relaxed, and I was less prone to do things based on autopilot, on habit, on knee-jerk reactions. And I started to quite like the new me, but also I started to notice little things, like I was getting more done in less time, which seems really paradoxical when you think that a lot of people say, what's mindfulness about? It's about sitting and doing nothing, which of course is a fallacy. But by sitting and taking time out at times that I was busy, actually I got things done faster. And that really, really hooked me. I've always enjoyed looking at my mental processes and looking at my thought processes, but this really brought it into focus, and I started to notice a lot of patterns of behaviour, some of which were helpful and some of which were unhelpful. And I was able to start to stand back and question why I should do what my brain was telling me to do. Was this the wisest thing? How should I deal with it? But similarly, just little practical things. I had a tendency in the past to be very plugged into the computer by the umbilical cord, and there I'd be typing away furiously. And I was ignoring the messages my body was sending me out, like, my shoulders are tense, or my legs have gone to sleep, or I desperately need to go to the loo. And certainly as I started, and I hear this so much on courses, especially from women, judgment itself is not a bad thing. We need judgments every day to keep us safe and to make decisions. The problem comes when we're making judgments and we're unaware that we're making judgments, and we're treating these judgments as facts. And then we respond based on these facts that aren't facts, and we can go off at a tangent very, very easily. So, for instance, if we make a judgment that somebody's behaviour is threatening, and then we start to behave in an aggressive manner, which then makes the other person aggressive back in return, you can see where that's going to take us. But actually, it wasn't a fact. It was a judgment. And as long as we accept that it is a judgment, and as a judgment, it may be correct, it may be incorrect. So it's separating the mental process part from the facts of the situation and just recognising that you're making a judgment. But never think that judgment is bad. Judgment can be very good.
Here's a 1-minute think. Bring to mind a time when you felt like you were mindful and focused. Times when you were very sharply concentrated on a task in front of you. What did that do for your relationship to time? Did you feel that you were more in the present moment when you were concentrated? In what way might that experience, being present and concentrated, feel different than multitasking or mindlessly, habitually going from one task to another? The leadership mindset is full of goodwill. One of the biggest changes that I've seen in organizations during my career is the emphasis currently, let's say over the last 10 years, on the importance of goodwill in organizations. What I mean by goodwill is very simple. Instead of thinking of an organization as a highly competitive environment where one is always after their own agenda, the literature in leadership development has really highlighted how important it is to work collaboratively. That word, collaboratively, in my mind means cooperative, and it also means assertive. It doesn't mean that we're pushovers. It means that we're looking for ways to work together so that each agenda can be in some way exercised, potentially allowing all of us to get some of what we need. The last aspect of the leadership mindset is that we're always learning. And that leads to a question. Do you have a fixed or a learning mindset. Why is that important? Here's the distinction. And for this, I will use organizations as the example. Organizations have mindsets. They have fixed or they have learning mindsets. An example of a fixed mindset in an organization is displayed in how they view the development of employees. In fixed mindset organization, there isn't a value that's placed on development of people. We hire people, we expect them to be able to do the job. Otherwise, why would we have hired them? We put them in this situation and they will show up that they can do it or they can't. If they can't do it, we'll find somebody else. That's a fixed mindset.
Jutta Tobias explains that an adaptive learning mindset can help us understand why mindfulness is so crucial to human development.
So Carol Dweck at Stanford is a brilliant researcher who has, through 30 and more years of research, been chipping away at this notion that our minds are fixed. Even our intelligence is much less fixed than we think it is, and it is based on our mental training. And of course, we're not talking about how we can think ourselves rich or thin through just mere mental activity. That's not what we're talking about. But we're talking about, when you're talking about these highly effective people being naturally, and I would like to question the word naturally, high in being able to concentrate and being able to be curious even. I don't buy that. What I buy is at some point in their life, they have developed or they have got an insight that motivated them to cultivate this interest or this concern for themselves that says, I need to practice either concentrating, I need to practice coming to my senses, I need to practice relaxing myself, and that has enabled them, in addition to their physical and other ability, to become so highly effective. My big point here is these naturally highly performing people are not necessarily genetically different at all, and we are realizing more and more of our genetic code even gets expressed or not expressed based on our experience of life or what we do to our bodies, what we do to our minds, who we are around with. So epigenetics is the field that says our genes express more and more depending on how we live. The conclusion of that is that we all can learn to do the practices that these highly effective people do if we are motivated to consistently do what these highly effective people do.
A learning mindset organization is one that is interested in employee development. That organization recognizes that we're in a constantly changing world, and that those organizations that place time, resources, and focus on continual learning are the best at adapting and engaging people. So, do you believe that we are the way that we are, and that's it? We're able to change our habits and develop what are called new neural pathways. People with a learning mindset display a certain kind of attitude that you can recognize because they're curious, they're interested, they want to learn. Are we a collection of habits and not much more? Well, it turns out that that's not true. We're not just a collection of habits. We can set an intention to learn, we can develop a whole new neurological groove, and we can become confident that we can adapt and cope by having the right skills, the right know-how, and the right tools.